Well, good morning, Portage. How are we doing this morning? For those that I haven't met, my name is Sonia Friesen, and I'm one of the campus pastors at our Nipawa site. And you know, we can give it up for Nipawa. You guys are just full of cheers, and I love it. And I love when we get to watch our stream. We always hear those cheers for Nipawa. Can we hear it for those joining our live stream this morning? Awesome. I just wanted to hear you cheer again, so thank you. You know, it's crazy to think it was actually 1 year ago today, the first Sunday of July, that Rylan and I were here at PAC incognito, visiting to see if this is where God would call us. And we are 10 months in, and we are just so excited to see what God is doing, what He has done, celebrating that, and knowing that there is so much more for us as a PAC family. Do you guys believe that? Yeah, there is so much more. And so I'm very honored to be with you this morning. And last Sunday, Nathan introduced to us our For Love Summer Series. And I hope you're excited about that. We are going after God's heart. I love Jacob's song. How many of you want that heart? Because we can have that. We have that today. And today, I'm excited that we get to spend some time in our 1/3 demographics love. And what is that? That really looks like asking God's heart for the people groups around us. Specifically, we're looking at our First Nations community here in Portage, and we're thinking about our Filipino community in Nipawa. But it really is, how do we connect with one another, just as God has connected with us? And I'm also excited about this because, you see, ever since the age of 13, I've been traveling to Latin America on missions trips. And I have seen and experienced connections gone really well. And I've also seen connecting gone bad. Wah, wah, wah. I think that could be a reality TV show, maybe. If any of you takes that up, just put my name in the trademark there. But I remember on this one trip we were in charge of renovating this play area for children. And our leader had this great idea, we thought at first, hey, let's do it exactly like we do it in Canada. And I remember our team just like, I mean, he's the leader, sure, I guess you should know what we're doing. And I remember the locals saying, well, you guys realize that our infrastructure is different, our climate is different. Like, is this actually going to work? And he's like, oh yes, let us teach you how we do things in Canada. So you can only imagine, we're slaving away, putting this flooring in, and you know, like in the back of our mind, we're just like, is this even worth it? Like, is this gonna work? And sure enough, the next day, the flooring starts to lift, and the locals had to redo the project anyways. Or on this same trip, our leader really wanted to come back home and say, I preached a sermon in Spanish. And so he went to Google Translator, copied his sermon notes, oh yeah, clicked print, and he has no basic training in the language, no idea of how to pronounce words. And I remember saying, like, I'll help you, please let me help you, let me translate. And he's like, no, I need to do this on my own. I need to say that I've done it. And so let's just say, I don't think Google Translate really endorses that even. I think they would be upset that they were used for that. And you could see immediately the people were not connecting. They were actually more frustrated, like, what is this man trying to do? You know, like, I came here, and that was a very long hour. And so you guys have no excuse to fall asleep on me this morning. And I think what we can gather from this is that that's a connecting gone bad moment, hey? We wouldn't do that. Like, we think, what was he thinking, right? And it's not to dishonor him, because you know what? His heart, he actually thought that this was the way to connect. You see, sometimes we have blinders. Sometimes we actually aren't aware of what's in our heart, and that actually affects how we connect with those around us. And you know, maybe if you're like, well, that's a little extreme, and you're right, that's extreme. But let's think of something else, another storyline. My name is Sonia Friesen, like I said, last name Friesen, enough said. And you see, you're laughing because you get it. But They're the moments that I usually meet new people, and now I will say this, this is overgeneralized, this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen often, where it'll start something like this, like, oh, where are you from? I'm actually from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Oh, where were you born? I was actually born in Toronto. My parents moved our family to Saskatoon when I was 4, and Saskatoon has been home ever since. And I can instantly see in their eyes this look of dissatisfaction. And I'll be honest, sometimes I play and I'll just avoid it until we'll see how far they go, and sometimes I'll just give it to them. But then if they're a little aggressive and they're not really, concerned about being PC, politically correct, they'll ask some more questions, and it'll be like, oh, well, where do your parents live? Well, remember I said we actually live in Saskatoon. I have 2 older brothers, 3 beautiful nephews on my side. All my immediate family's there. And then this is when they're just desperate, and the desperate finale will look like, all right, where are your ancestors from? And to that I say, my parents were born in Guatemala. They immigrated to Canada. I was born in Canada, and I come from Guatemalan descent. So if I have any Spanish speakers here, buenos dias, que Dios les bendiga. Good morning, God bless you. But the funny thing is, we can laugh at that, but the funny thing is if Friesen is with me, last name Friesen, remember that, he makes it out after the first question. Where are you from? Saskatchewan. Oh, cool. We got more questions for you. Why is that? It's like the elephant in the room. And I'm not saying I'm offended, okay? So don't take that. And if you've ever done that to me, there's grace, you guys. That's not the point. It's not about getting the words perfect. It's not about getting the questions perfect. It's what's in our heart when we're connecting with others. What is the foundation that we're actually wanting to connect? Did you come and introduce yourself and ask these questions because you actually want to connect with me? Or do you want to satisfy a prejudice, a preconceived opinion that I don't look like a prairie girl? Right? Or to this leader on this trip, was he really wanting to build relationship? Or was he saying, we know how to do it better, let me teach you because we know better? You see, sometimes we can satisfy ourselves and think that we're actually connecting, but there's still something going on there that isn't fully what God's inviting us into. And this morning, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about these blinders that we sometimes have. And I really think that most of the time we're just not aware of it. But this is the good thing, that God brings us into awareness so we can grow. And I think sometimes we focus on outward appearances or externals because we're processing the differences, right? Like it's very obvious I've been in the heaven tanning bed longer than some of you, or you guys didn't get to the tanning bed, right? Like there's these obvious differences on the external. And so it's okay to process those. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's when we start connecting based on that, I believe that we start connecting out of a foundation of accommodation. Hear me. The foundation of accommodation meaning tolerance. Meaning I'll get to know you, but there's something actually in it for me. I'll get to know you, but what are we accommodating? Accommodating can look like I'm making space for you to fit. I made the space for you to come here. You should be thankful. Accommodating says, you know what, we can make this work. We'll figure it out. Like, we'll make it work because we have to make it work. Accommodation starts to feel like a chore or a duty. Like, I'm supposed to reach out to you, so come. I'm supposed to do this. I'll feel better if you do, so please just come. But you see, God invites us to so much more than this. And this is what we're going to dive into. And I was thinking about in 1 Samuel, we have the prophet Samuel, and the current king who was in reign was Saul, and he was rejected by God. He had been disobedient. And God tells Samuel, you need to go anoint the next king I've appointed. And let's see what it says in 1 Samuel 16, chapter 1. It says, "The Lord said to Samuel, 'How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel?'" In verse 6, it says, "When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, 'Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord.'" And verse 7, "But the Lord said to Samuel, 'Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at.'" You see, people look at outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And isn't that good news for us this morning? That the Lord looks at your heart. You see, Samuel begins by connecting based on outward appearance. We can see that, right? And in this time and culture, it would be very common for the oldest always to go first. So it's not weird that Samuel says, "Oh, Eliab, you are the one." And since he would have been older, he would have probably looked a little more fit like a king. And God just shatters that and reminds Samuel, there's so much more. There's so much more. You see, in this instance, it was based on age. But our outward appearance and external factors can be based on color, social status, education, race, gender. You fill in the blank. What's the difference? What's the obvious difference that you see, that you respond to? You see, but the Lord doesn't see things the way we see them. He looks at the heart. Let's carry on and see what happens. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" "They're still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He's tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. We will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in, and he was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features. Then the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Then Samuel travels on to Ramah. What do we see this? What do we see here? We see that when Samuel actually surrenders that accommodation, when he says, "I'm giving my eyes," and trusting God's eyes, trusting that God knows best of to who he's appointed, when he releases that, we see this beautiful picture of welcome. Can you imagine after a hard day work on the field, all of a sudden you're called in and you're called into royalty? And what did David look like? It said he had a fine appearance, handsome features. You see, sometimes we can miss out on connecting to the ones that are chosen because we're using our vision, we're using our lenses, and God's calling us to so much deeper than that. And you know why that is? Good thing you asked. That's because that's exactly what God has done for us. He calls you from wherever you are, the hard day at work, the tough financial issues, the storms where you feel like you're drowning, where you have felt lost, where you didn't know your purpose or your meaning, and he calls you into royalty. He created the space for you. He created the space for me. You see, we don't get to make provision or create space for a space that already God has designed and created for all to be welcome. That's how we're welcomed in. In John chapter 15, starting in verse 9, it says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands and remain in his love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command: love each other. So how have you been welcomed? How have we been welcomed? Well, Jesus says you're chosen. You are chosen. You were designed, and it's good. You were chosen. And not only are you chosen, you're appointed. You're appointed to go and release this. This that you have found, this welcome that you have found, you are released to go and give that, so that no one out there is feeling unwelcome, that no one out there is feeling that they have just been accommodated for. You see, not only does he call us appointed, but he calls us friend. He doesn't call, just an acquaintance, but he actually gives us access to the Father's heart. We know the Master's business. He's given you that privilege because you're a friend. And so we seek out friendship. You see, it can be very easy to stay stuck in our accommodations. It can be very easy for us to just be fulfilling what we want or what we think we get out of this connection. But that's not what Jesus does for us. You see, welcome becomes a delight. Welcome says there's always been a place for you. Welcome says, I want to get to know you because you hold value and you are a gift. I honor your life. Welcome says, I need you. Welcome feels like this excitement of getting to know someone that you have really wanted to get to know for a while, and they are now part of your community. It's kind of like a surprise party. I don't know if you've ever planned one or been a part of one, but you're anticipating the arrival of the person you've designated to celebrate, and you're excited to celebrate them. And if not, you need to get a party hat on and get excited, I think. But you're excited, you're anticipating this, and when they arrive, what do? You yell out, surprise! You've arrived! This space was prepared for you. It's always been there. Welcome to your space. You see, I believe that the change begins in our hearts. Remember, what does the Lord look at? Our hearts. And that's where it begins, where we begin to admit the areas where maybe we are just accommodating. Where maybe we're just saying, you can come in, but can you look like us? And I would dare say that maybe that's the place is because we're scared, because we haven't known welcome in our heart fully yet. And God's calling us to know that welcome. Remember, you're chosen, you're appointed, you're a friend. And so, like I said before, the last name Friesen. Yes, I married into a Mennonite family. All right. Yeah, there you go. Do we have any Mennonites in the house this morning? All right, there we go. Well, you know what? I've learned that Mennonite culture and Spanish culture are very different. I have learned that fried dough and watermelon, rollkuchen, is actually a whole meal. I remember remember when Rylan and I were dating, and he invited me over to his family's. He's like, yeah, you're coming for supper. And I see this fried dough and watermelon on the table, and I wasn't about to ask, like, is this just the appetizer, or is there, are we doing dessert first, or what is this? And that was the whole meal. And I was just surprised. It was different. I've also learned that Mennonite culture can be a little more stoic than Spanish culture. Spanish culture, when we kiss, when we greet, we kiss and hug. And so you're welcome that I've spared you that. I've learned how to be contextualized into culture. That's a connecting gone bad moment, maybe. I've also learned that Spanish culture, we can talk a mile a minute and we wear our heart on our sleeve, and there's a time and a place for that. But you know what? I've also learned that because of these differences, in my heart, I can start to feel superior. I can start to think that my culture has it better than you. I can start to pick apart things and say, well, if you only did things like we did, if roll cooking was just maybe an appetizer. You see, I've noticed that my heart, I can live out accommodation very easily. And if I don't stop to reflect and figure out how I'm connecting, I can just get stuck in that. And God's calling us into so much more. You see, as I continue to surrender these differences to God and allow Him to change my heart, I begin to see that Mennonite culture is rich in resourcefulness, very resourceful. I can see that Mennonite culture is very generous to those in need, always ready to pitch in. I can see that and taste that fried dough and watermelon is delicious as a meal. You see, I start to see how Jesus sees. I start to see how He sees His people. I start to see the heart, the beauty in the heart of a different culture. I start to see that I need them. I start to see that I can honor them. I start to see that they're a gift. The process of that is surrender. Is telling God, I have these accommodations, but how do I make sense, God, that we all hold the same place at the table you call us to? We're all equal. And so why would I waste my life in just accommodating when there's so much more delight to be found and experienced? You see, Jesus invites us all, just as we are. And so how do we start to check our heart if we're living out of accommodating or we're actually living out of a welcome? I think accommodating looks like you're invited, and that's it. You're just invited because I have to give you space. I guess I'll share my space with you. You're invited. I'm not super pumped, but. And welcome says, you are honored. We want to get to know you. You're a gift. We've actually been living out in this space, and we want you to enjoy your part of this space. Accommodate would say, I see all the things wrong with your people group. I see you as a project, and I just want to fix you. If you guys just learned this, if you guys just did that. And welcome says, friend. Welcome says, I want to get to know you. Welcome says, you are valuable. Accommodating looks like, look at me, look what I'm doing for these people. Look, I'm sitting next to someone that looks different than me. I'm eating the fried dough, it's delicious. Welcome says, let's rejoice. Let's rejoice in the life that we do together. because I need you and you need me. What are the areas in your heart, maybe, that you've given to just accommodation because God wants to release welcome here today? He wants you to know how you were welcomed. Maybe you just need to be reminded of that this morning. Maybe you just need to be reminded that you are welcome just as you are. You see, I believe that God has strategically placed us here in Prairie with a large First Nations community around us. Did you hear that? God has placed us around them because they were here to begin with. They were first here, and now we are here. And that's a gift. I really do believe that God is an intentional God, and He doesn't do things by random. He places us around the people that are actually going to bear much fruit, where you are going to be amazed at what it looks like to do life with our First Nations brothers and sisters, with the other people groups growing and coming in. Your mind, believe me, your mind is going to be blown at how much delight God has in that. You see, this love of ours into growing into 1/3 demographic, into starting to look like our community around us, it's already happening. It's already happening. As many of you give your hearts to say, no longer am I just tolerating you, no longer am I providing accommodations for you, you are welcome. And so you just get to be invited into that. That's all we're doing here. This is already happening. And maybe you're new here and you're wondering, maybe it's your first Sunday and you're like, does this place actually do this? You know, like I hear a lot of this talk. Is it lived out? Or maybe you're here and you're wondering, can I actually be who I am? Am I actually allowed to not conform, but to present myself as God has created me? Or maybe you're one of the visible minorities like myself here, and you're wondering, how do I play out here? What does this look like? Let me tell you this, and I can only speak from personal experience, that since day one of meeting the leadership here at PAC, I was seen beyond my color. I was seen beyond my race. The questions asked weren't, how can we look good and maximize this because you're here? Or I just need you to fit this need of ours because we just need that culture here? Or how can we fix you to look like us and then we can connect? No. You want to know the real questions asked? The questions asked were, Sonia, what's in your heart? Sonia, how do we release you to be who God has made you to be? How can we learn from each other? Let's do community. You are welcome. And guess what? That's exactly the heart we're going after here. That's exactly the heart that's made available to you to welcome. And so if you're still on the fence, pressure's off. You don't have to conform to fit in here. You are welcome. You are seen. You are loved. You are valuable. You are honored. Because you see, the reality is we're not actually into accommodating for you. We're not. We're actually not into accommodating our First Nation brothers and sisters. We're actually here to welcome. We're actually going after the welcome because that's what's in God's heart. I'm going to invite up the band. You see, as you have been welcomed, you're invited to welcome those outside these walls that look different than you. They may eat different things. They may look different. But yet we all hold equal places at the table. And if you're still wondering why reaching out to those around us, why the demographics are so important to us, let's read in Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 and 10. It says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. And they were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. And they cried out in a loud voice, 'Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb.'" You see, the reason we love this is because this is what heaven looks like. We honor, we are friends, we rejoice in each other, we welcome. And you know what the best news is? We don't have to wait. This is available today. This is available for us now. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And if you're wondering why your heart is giving you the nudge, like, I want this, you know why? It's because you and me, we were made for heaven. This is what we were made for. And God's heart is becoming our heart. The things God loves, we love. And that's why we're going after this. This is what heaven looks like. Why don't we stand and worship?